Hi everybody! Today we'll start the Tukan Studios Advent Calendar. And I know there are people all around the world watching this, so maybe you're not familiar with the concept of Advent calendars. So this is an Advent calendar. And it has 24 of these little doors here, and every day we open one of these little doors and we find a piece of chocolate. Yummy. And when all the doors are open and all the chocolate is eaten, we know tomorrow is Christmas Day and we'll have chocolate all day. Others think that there is a reason why there are 24 bottles of beer in a box. So every day we pick a bottle of beer, and when the box is empty, we know tomorrow is Christmas Day and never mind. Oh yeah. And the Tukan Studios Advent Calendar will be different. We will have a synthesizer, and we start with a tiny little synthesizer, and every day it will get features and features and features. And then on Christmas Eve, we will have a full-featured synthesizer with more than 350 parameters that we can adjust. And I will explain every parameter and detail about all this. But don't worry, I will explain all the features in small little steps. You know, we have 24 days. So this Advent calendar will not only about having a synthesizer at the end, but also about learning how to program sounds and what all the features are about in classic synthesizers. You will get this plugin from my repack repository. Watch for this name December Synth. And then you can update it every day and try the new features. And I really hope this is worth all the effort. No, I really hope that you all stick with me and do this Advent calendar together. So let's start with the first feature. So we start with something very simple, and this is what we call an oscillator. An oscillator is a thing that constantly plays back a certain shape at a certain frequency. And what we see here is the so-called sawtooth shape. And if I now bring in an oscilloscope and I play a note on my keyboard, you can see in the oscilloscope that this represents this shape. Let me play a higher note so we can see why it's called a sawtooth. And maybe you noticed that the shape is not really exactly this straight line in the oscilloscope. Let's see that again. So what we can see is there's a little bit of overshoot at the beginning of this period and a bit of undershoot or negative overshoot, and the line is not really straight. Let's see that again. But that's perfectly normal. Let's see another thing, and this is a frequency spectrum analyzer, and here we can see the spectrum of the sound. And what we just saw is what we call a fundamental, the lowest frequency that is oscillating, and a lot of what we call overtones. Let's see that again. And what we can see is that these overtones wouldn't stop at 20 kilohertz, so they would go further than that line here. But in digital audio, we could not reproduce that correctly. So that would end up in what we call aliasing. And aliasing simply means that the frequencies above 20 kilohertz or 22 kilohertz are mirrored at this frequency down, so they would give us wrong frequency content. And this is why this shape looks different, because we're using band-limited synthesis, which simply means that the frequencies which would produce wrong frequency content aren't generated at all. So the signal itself has to be different than the clean sawtooth signal. And if we modify a signal, it will look different. So that's why it looks different on the oscilloscope. But don't worry, it doesn't sound different because we're just removing content that we can't hear. And then we have different shapes. So this was the sawtooth. Let's hear that again. And we have the triangle shape, which is much more dull. And we have the sine shape, And the sine shape is very special because this is the only shape that does not produce any overtones at all. And then there are two other shapes, and this is the alternating sawtooth. And we have the so-called square wave. And for all you experts who would say, well, did I see aliasing here? Well, yes. There's just a tiny little bit of aliasing, but that's so low level that we shouldn't hear it. So why is this still in there? The reason is simple. Now we're just having this one oscillator generating a waveform, but we will have a lot more features in this synthesizer later. And this just reduces the CPU load. So yes, I could make it without the aliases, but this costs a lot of CPU. So you see, that's quite simple. Sine wave, triangle, sawtooth, alternating sawtooth, and square wave, and that's it for today. But that's not all that this thing can do, because we could play several notes at once. This is what we call polyphonic synthesizer. And well, yes, that might seem simple to you, but what is happening is actually every note you play on your keyboard has an own oscillator generating the waveform at the given frequency from the key. So actually, we don't have one oscillator. So if we play a chord, we might have 3 oscillators. But since they all play with the same setting here, we don't call this oscillators, we call this voices. It's just like, imagine you sing a song and then you do a double tracking and sing it, and then you do another overdub singing a harmony voice and maybe another harmony voice. So you would always have yourself singing, but you hear 4 or 5 voices. So terminology, in this case, we have one oscillator that can play 12 voices. And there's even one more thing that this already can do, and this is the pitch wheel. Let's hear that. So that's it for today. I hope you have fun with this, and bye bye.